Good afternoon, Governor Schwarzenegger and Cabinet. We are Webb Environmental Consulting, and it is our mission to weave together the connections of sustainability. My name is Alexis Wood, and I'm a forester with the U.S. Forest Service, with a specialty in environmental law.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kenan, and I'm the soil scientist working in conjunction with the Natural Resources Conservation Service.
Hello, my name is Kristen. I'm a geohydrologist with the California Department of Water Resources.
Good afternoon. My name is Cory, and I'm a wildlife biologist with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Murry, and I'm a hydrologist from the California Department of Water Resources with a specialty in public relations.
In the San Joaquin Valley, there are many water quality issues that will affect groundwater. The San Joaquin River is dammed by the Bryant Dam, and it has Millerton Lake behind it. In this area, unsustainable urban use causes salinity problems and other chemical contaminants in the groundwater throughout the San Joaquin Valley.
As Cory said, there are numerous groundwater problems in the San Joaquin Valley. Water is unsustainable and poorly managed. Water-intensive, low-value crops are utilized, and ecosystem water needs are ignored. Habitat loss and animal extinction is on the rise, along with chemical contamination, land subsidence, and excessive runoff. Groundwater use now exceeds replenishment and will stay that way if a change is not made. To address these problems, Webb Environmental has created a viable chapter of the comprehensive statewide groundwater plan through urban, agricultural, and environmental planning.
As the San Joaquin Valley's water crisis worsens, and as groundwater resources continue to deplete, Webb Environmental has developed a plan that allows us to address environmental, commercial, urban, and agricultural water needs. We will create an integrated water management program, the San Joaquin Area Water Project Authority, or SAJAPA, much like the Santa Ana Water Project Authority in Southern California. We will create the Blue Circle Group to promote consensus building and interagency coordination. SAJAPA, working in conjunction with Webb Environmental, has provided mitigations and solutions for each area of concern. First, to deal with groundwater issues, we will incorporate conjunctive use, SAJAPA formation, recharge basins, and water regulations. Second, to reform our unsustainable water use, we will incorporate purple piping, a water reclamation facility, and conservation efforts. Third, to provide for our agricultural needs, we will incorporate contour cropping and farming best management practices. Fourth, to mitigate salinity issues, we will incorporate salt-tolerant plants and salt farms. Fifth, to reduce chemical pollution, we will incorporate regulation on contamination, basin assessments, and a reverse osmosis facility. Sixth, and finally, to prevent ecosystem endangerment, we will incorporate riparian buffers and xeriscaping with native trees and native ground cover. Through Webb Environmental and SAJAPA, we will ensure we will meet San Joaquin Valley's present and future human, economic, and ecological needs.
As Joe Bernowski, engineer of the Western Municipal Water District, once said, there are many ways to conserve water, and they all start with you. This is why SAJAPA, the San Joaquin Area Water Project Authority, will tackle multiple problems to not just focus on groundwater, since in order to sustainably manage our groundwater resource, we must also sustain water above ground as well. Water reclamation plants are indeed expensive. However, the investment made by the San Joaquin stakeholders will save their drinking water and their groundwater, their most valuable resource in the semi-arid environment. Our tertiary water treatment facility, including desalinization and reverse osmosis treatment, will reclaim water previously impossible to keep at the Fresno secondary treatment water facility. 50 million gallons a day can be reclaimed and be sent to new communities with dual piping. The purple pipes will transport the recently treated water to communities and allow them to reuse 80% of the water they previously sent to this community, to the facility, rather. This practice alone can save 15% GPCD, along with the 50% that Alexis will later explain. Also, sulfuric acid and other chemicals can be extracted from the 15% brine and used for commercial use. The next major issue is salinity. According to Pamela Creedon of CV Salts, the Central Valley Salinity Alternatives for Long-Term Sustainability, 34,000 to 64,000 jobs will be lost in the Central Valley due to salinity by 2050. It is true that we are far too inland for saltwater intrusion. However, the salinity is a realistic issue. This salinity instead comes from pesticides and agricultural land use, such as CAFOs, and urban and industrial runoff. Sajapa's new salt farms provide a place for water to evaporate and return to the hydrologic cycle, and for the salts to be safely collected and also used for commercial use, rather than remaining in the soil and adding to the 400,000 acres in the Central Valley already saline. Sajapa will facilitate these water smart practices for the good of the San Joaquin community.
Gilbert Pinchot once said that when conflicting interests must be reconciled, the question shall always be answered from the standpoint of the greatest good for the greatest number in the long run. Our management plan is looking towards that greatest good in the long run that Pinchot referred to, in part by taking advantage of urban forestry practices and all their positive benefits. First, our plan will look towards urban centers like the city of Fresno to require native tree and plant species to be incorporated into new landscaping developments. This practice, called xeriscaping, can reduce GPCD by 50%, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier. Native white alder, Ulmus rhombifolia, and California buckeye, Ageless californica, can be used in areas like the recharge basins that we'll be implementing throughout the San Joaquin area. Treed areas facilitate better groundwater infiltration, improved air quality, improved water quality, and can reduce temperatures in their shady areas by up to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And who doesn't like a cooler city? A mature tree is estimated by the Center for Urban Forestry to indirectly pay landowners $600 in such services that I just mentioned. One negative impact of this xeriscaping movement could potentially be that some landowners won't want to get rid of their turf, because who doesn't like a green lawn? However, in general, this will help increase our water sustainability. Our second forestry approach will be to enhance the riparian buffers along the San Joaquin River. Native riparian trees will protect the delicate river ecosystem and from the pollution and human impacts of rapidly urbanizing areas and farmland just adjacent to the stream, or the river rather. Our web of sustainability cannot be maintained without this forestry component. To put it as the Society of American Foresters did, trees are the answer. They are.
Whenever human expansion and urban growth occurs, wildlife habitat will be affected. However, if we plan carefully, we can mitigate many of these negative effects. With quickly developing water quality issues in the Fresno area, it is very important that we tread carefully, because it can become a very slippery slope once these water quality issues get out of hand. The ecosystem in the Fresno area is a very fragile and delicate one, and biodiversity is at risk. Many of the species depend on very sparsely placed habitat. Species such as the San Joaquin kit fox, the giant garter snake, the valley longhorn elderberry beetle, and the California clapperrail, which are all endemic to the area. These species need to be protected, and they need habitat to ensure their success and healthy growth. To do this, we plan to implement wildlife corridors and riparian buffers, which allow for interaction between the species. The previously fragmented habitats will now be connected, and biodiversity and genetic variability can be shared. We also plan to put in place drainage basins, which recharges groundwater, can contribute to the community, and also allows for birds flying up in north and south up the Pacific Flyway to have a resting area. Also, we will be working in conjunction with the San Joaquin River Restoration Project. With this, they plan for regular releases from the Bryant Dam from Miller Lake down the San Joaquin River to restore its flow. We will put in spawning gravel, which allows for Chinook and coho salmon to lay their eggs and complete their life cycle. Also, we want to protect our water quality. We don't want another natural or an environmental disaster like Kesterson, where the water quality got out of hand and animals started dying and getting deformed. With careful planning, we can mitigate many of the negative effects of human growth, while still providing for humanity's needs.
As Rich Casale of the NRCS once said, it all starts with the soils, its capabilities, and limitations. In order to address the San Joaquin Valley's water crisis, Webb Environmental has developed a comprehensive and precise plan to increase the sustainability and fertility of the land. By implementing mitigations and best management practices, we will be able to deal with any erosion, sedimentation, salinity, and subsidence issues, and we will be able to address all areas of concern. The first problem that needs to be addressed is erosion. Every year, about 1.6 billion tons of soil are worn away from 417 million acres of U.S. farmland and is deposited in the lakes, rivers, and reservoirs. That's a lot. To mitigate the effects of erosion, we will xeriscape the land and implement native ground cover that reduces water runoff and saves valuable topsoil. Utilizing farming best management practices such as contour cropping and water diversion channels allows us to disperse water runoff to the point to where it slows down enough to stop erosion. The second problem that we will address is sedimentation. To mitigate the effects of sedimentation, we will implement riparian buffers all along the San Joaquin River, especially adjacent to farms. These will prevent sedimentation from erosion and water runoff that pollutes the rivers, hurts the fish populations, and decreases water quality. The effectiveness of well-maintained grass riparian buffers for sediment removal may be as high as 90 to 95%, and combined with forest riparian buffers, the problem can be controlled. The third problem that we will address is salinity. By rotating salt-tolerant crops such as Jose tall wheatgrass and alfalfa, we will be able to mitigate salinity issues. Also, the plants of riparian buffers will use runoff water so that it does not collect and raise the salinity of the soil. Instead of allowing our excess nitrates and phosphates to pollute the soil, why not let the plants use them at the riparian buffers? The final problem that we will address is land subsidence. By recharging groundwater aquifers, we will be able to raise the water table and prevent further subsidence. Xeriscaping slows down runoff water and allows it to percolate back into the ground. Riparian buffers allow for bank storage that will eventually recharge the aquifers. And by installing recharge basins over well-drained soils, we can direct water runoff to a central spot where it can be purified and has the best chance for groundwater recharge. Through Webb Environmental, we will ensure the land stays both fertile and sustainable. Prosperous soils ensures that the San Joaquin Valley remains prosperous for generations to come. And as Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, the nation that destroys the soils destroys itself.
In order to protect the 4 natural resource categories of Webb Environmental, we must preserve our groundwater supply. SJAPA, much like the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority in Southern California, will be a board composed of water authorities like Westland's Water District, which will facilitate better groundwater management. SJAPA encourages the permitting of well drilling as well as quarterly contaminant assessments and water table measurements. Although these mitigations will be a change from the community's normal water use, it will help all associated parties understand their groundwater supply better. Webb Environmental also encourages the use of conjunctive use, or the use of surface water and groundwater together as one mutual resource. We will utilize conjunctive use through recharge basins that will recharge the groundwater aquifers when water is at its highest in the winter. These recharge basins can also be dually used as community parks, like those in Fresno, California. Also a problem in the Central Valley are salts and nitrates. Every 5 minutes, the equivalent of 1 semi-truck filled to the brim of salt enters the Central Valley and never leaves. If this salt is allowed to stay on the Earth's surface, it can percolate down past the unsaturated zone, into the saturated zone, and into confined aquifers, where it can stay for centuries or even millennia. This means our grandchildren's grandchildren could be dealing with the same salts that we are now. Groundwater quality connects all aspects of the environment. Problems with my groundwater held in Eli's soil will pollute Elizabeth's surface water, which will poison Alexis's forest and destroy Cory's wildlife habitats. To protect all of our resources, we need to protect the quality and quantity of our groundwater supply.
Our plan integrates various already existing legislation to try to facilitate the different actions we plan to take. The Clean Water Act, Federal Clean Water Act, and the California Porter-Cologne Act put pressure on various water quality control agencies to institute best management practices that our plan includes. CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, provides that in general, any plan must maintain ecosystem quality and an environmental impact report must be completed before the project continues. Senate Bill 1938 as an amendment to the California Water Code in 2002 requires the development of an integrated regional water management plan in the San Joaquin area, namely the entirety of what we're presenting to you. The California Endangered Species Act, as well as the Federal Endangered Species Act, protect endemic species such as the San Joaquin kit fox and their habitat, which we'll be enhancing through riparian buffer implementation.
As Web Environmental, our stakeholders are our highest priority. Our integrated water management plan, SEJAPA, will ultimately benefit the community for years to come. Investing in a water treatment facility and water sustainability practices will save the San Joaquin area millions of dollars. The current price for 1 acre-foot is $600 to $800 imported. Providing urban communities with locally reclaimed water will save the city up to $900 to $1,200 per household, since an average family consumes approximately 1.5 acre-feet per year. To connect the San Joaquin community, our Blue Circle project will bring in the farmers, the citizens, and the community leaders to social gatherings to bring them together as one whole community to focus on their single issue. Stronger bonds outside of business, after all, create stronger bonds in business. And eventually, the San Joaquin area will become a primary leader for the Central Valley for water sustainability. With an educated community and a water-smart city, SEJAPA will bring the Central Valley one step closer to a sustainable Central Valley and a stable water resource.
In a recent survey, when asked, "Where does your water come from?" most Californians answered, "Out of my tap." When asked, "What is the Delta?" referring to the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta, the most common answer was, "An airline." How can we expect our community to protect groundwater if they are unaware of the issues it faces? As Elizabeth said, with Web Environmental, our stakeholders are our biggest priority. This is why we will create a community education foundation to educate those in our community about their groundwater issues. With this community education program, we will create a water-smart city.
At this point, we'd like to introduce the timeline for our 10-year plan.
At year 0, SEJAPA, the San Joaquin Area Water Project Authority, is formed. Our environmental impact report will also be filed.
At year 1, the first Blue Circle community outreach meeting will take place.
At year 2, recharge pond sites are successfully located around agricultural lands and installed. The building of the water treatment facility also begins.
By year 4, our riparian buffers are successfully implemented.
At year 6, farming BMPs, such as drip irrigation, are implemented in the majority of the agricultural fields.
By year 8, our water treatment facility with tertiary level capabilities is completed.
And finally, at year 10, SEJAPA will file a reassessment to determine if the sustainability alternatives are successful.
Excuse us. The budget for our project is as follows. Riparian buffers will cost $300,000.
The California Landowners Incentive Program, CEQA, and the NCCP will help pay for this.
Water treatment facility will cost $115 million.
This will be paid for by Prop 82, 84, 13, and the Clean Drinking Water State Revolving Fund.
The upkeep of SEJAPA will cost $15 million.
Participating agencies will cover this cost.
Recharge ponds will cost $100,000.
The Endangered Species Act and WIP will help pay for this.
Farming BMPs will cost $1 million.
And Farm Bill 2008 will cover this cost.
Our total budget for this project is $201,400,000.
As one environmentalist put it, working for the environment should not be a way to get rich, but a way to be rich. Groundwater protection is our path to the future. We're developing sustainable solutions to preserve and protect our groundwater through urban, agricultural, and environmental planning. We must give back to the environment as it has given so much to us. Web Environmental represents all of the stakeholders through social, economic, and environmental planning. Our web is held together by these core values and 5 categories of the environment. In forestry, we focus on practicing urban forestry and riparian buffers to ensure a healthy ecosystem. In wildlife, we use habitat conservation methods and protection of native species to ensure high biodiversity. With groundwater, we use conjunctive use and protection from salinity to ensure that our water quality is safe. In aquatics, we use purple pipe, xeriscaping, and salt farms to ensure our water quality is good and we conserve our water. In soils, we want to prevent erosion, sedimentation, and land subsidence issues. Each piece is essential, and without one, the web will collapse. With Web Environmental, we are weaving together the connections of sustainability. As John Muir said, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. Thank you for your time.
Comments in your presentation, so I'm not going to ask that question. My question is going to be dealing with the Community Education Foundation. How would you fund that part of your proposal?
Well, we will include that in some of the portion of what we will be asking for that consortium of water agencies involved in SAJAPA. That will be a portion of what they'll be spending, is to try to reach out to those communities and get them educated so that they know more about how they can feed back to help their entire watershed.
Education is definitely one of the most important things because it'll ensure that we pass on our sustainable practices on to the future generations. So we will definitely make sure that there are funds set aside for education to ensure that our practices that we're setting up right now continue on through the future.
As Alexis said, the funds that participating agencies will pay to SAJAPA will be included in that $50 million that we showed you on the budget, and we will definitely use part of that money for education. As Cory mentioned, it's one of the most important things of our plan.
I'll do the next question. The San Joaquin Valley houses a very large dairy industry, and probably over 1.5 million animals. And I'd like to know what consideration you've given to handling the waste from that industry.
Well, as we said, we'll be implementing our riparian buffers near the river. So especially when there is a dairy or a farm adjacent to the river, the riparian buffers will help take out the pollutants so that the pollutants don't get into the water supply. And our just best management practices will help contain this and will help mitigate any effects of the chemical pollution.
The recharge ponds placed around agricultural lands and the feeding operations will collect the runoff, the polluted runoff, and that water will be taken and treated at our water treatment facility. So this is how we'll eliminate the waste.
The more native plants that we will implement throughout the entire area will do, as Eli mentioned, to pull out those nitrates. And so we want to encourage that as much as possible. But for direct action, in the future, our plan will look towards a reverse osmosis facility.
What are some of the measures of success for your project or plan in terms of water supply and quality?
If our plan will be successful when our water demands go down and our water quality issues are fixed. We don't want huge salinity issues. We are trying to prevent chemical contamination. So once those are accomplished, then we will know that our plan is a success. And that will come with time. It's not going to just happen immediately, but it will have to come over time.
Another aspect of our success will be when they're asked about the Delta, they'll actually know that their water comes from the San Joaquin, Sacramento Delta.
Our plan, we also know our plan will eventually have success since we model after SAPA in Southern California, which has dramatically seen success since its creation 10 years ago.
Okay, I really liked your plan. It's very comprehensive, and I was wondering about the recharge basins. I think you may have maybe undervalued them at 100,000. I think you're probably going to need more for that. I think it's a great idea because they provide habitat, but I'm just wondering if they provide some downsides in terms of evaporation. I was wondering if you thought of refurbishment of artificial refurbishment of groundwater in any way as part of the plan, and how you do that.
are downfalls to every plan. Nothing's going to be perfect. With our recharge basins, it could increase nitrates on the top of the soil, but as Elizabeth said, we could possibly use it as a salt farm to, after the water evaporates, take the salts and put them to good use somewhere else in the community.
The areas that we choose for the recharge basins, we're going to choose it over a well-drained soil. And the benefits of this is that when we put the water, when it collects at the recharge basin, when it purifies, it will purify as it goes back into the groundwater so that it will kind of clean up the water.
We want to take advantage of these natural areas, so there won't be so much construction or as much impact on the environment. We want to stick with the natural ecological formations as much as possible.
Also, these recharge basins will serve a purpose for the community too, and we can educate them as they come and enjoy it like a park. I know in Fresno there are parks that serve as recharge basins along with just like a community area where you can go play with your kids or have a picnic.
Your company did a very nice job with the timeline of operations and the budget. I was wondering if I may have missed this, where the company anticipates acquiring the funds available to proceed with the plan.
Well, most of our monies will come from various propositions of the state and the different grants monies that they provide for the specific projects that we're going to be accomplishing. So we'd have to apply for those monies already allocated for the purposes that we're going to be implementing through our plan.
Also, once our plan is completed and the community hops on board, so it's stated in the Senate 1938 bill that we mentioned earlier that before you get any funding, you have to create this plan. So once our plan is created and the community is with us, then we can get the funds.
I have a follow-up question to that. It seems you're primarily focused on public funding. Are you looking at any kind of partnerships with private sector funding?
Yes, the SAJAPA organization is going to bring together the various water quality agencies in the area, and so we're going to rely partly on them to provide monies because, I mean, it is their own water supplies that are being involved in this. So they're going to provide some of the funds.
It's a give and take situation. SAJAPA gives these these water agencies advice how to manage their groundwater. And in turn, they pay us for our guidance. With these monies, with the $50 million that we will acquire, some of it can be put towards the entire plan.
What's so great about something like SAJAPA, where all the water quality agencies can group together, before they used to fight, and what we've seen in SAPA in Southern California is that now the water agencies aren't just fighting and suing each other, but they're actually working together to ensure that water quality is obtained.
I'd like to ask a question. What measures in your plan address those communities that don't have adequate treatment for their water supplies, be they surface or groundwater?
Cities like you mentioned, like Alpa, we know that they have large problems with arsenic. In our area, the San Joaquin area, there are many rural communities that don't have access to these water treatment facilities. They're drinking dirty water and they don't have the funds to fix this. With our funding on our water treatment facility, it's a regional water treatment facility. We can take in lots of water from all over the region to help those rural communities.
Just as a follow-up on that, you're talking about a water treatment facility, because San Joaquin Valley is quite large. Are you talking about multiple water treatment facilities? I wasn't clear on that, but if you could clarify that, appreciate it.
Well, in Fresno, they have a regional water treatment facility that manages most of the city, and they have satellite, smaller water treatment facilities connecting to that. And so we plan to model our water treatment facility like that. So we'll have satellite areas throughout to contribute to the largest plant.
Since tertiary treatment is expensive, the primary plant will be the only one with tertiary treatment. So the satellite treatment facilities will not cost as much.
These satellite facilities will be made later in our plan. We'll start with the large water facility. We're taking our plans systematically and adding on ones as we go along and acquire more funding.
I guess I'll ask one more question. It seems that your plan really relies on a lot of incentives and cooperative actions. Darn.